Hello, my name is Jason Marcacci, and I'm presenting my case study analysis on Stuxnet for my Cyberwarfare, Cybercrime, and Digital Forensics class. For incident summary, the cyber attack Stuxnet is facilitated by a worm with complex synergistic components. Identified in 2010, it targeted Iran nuclear facilities to hinder the processing of nuclear materials. It's theorized that U.S. and Israeli governments were involved in nation-state attacks facilitated utilizing Stuxnet in order to delay these nuclear programs in Iran. This is constituted as a cyber attack, but further it constitutes as cyber warfare and the usage of cyber malware to progress the initiative of a government. Here's our investigation timeline adapted from the w32.stuxnet dossier from Broadcom. On June 2009, earliest variant was identified from components of Stuxnet. January 25 of 2010, Stuxnet was signed by a valid Realtek semiconductor certificate, likely stolen. March 2010, the forced exploit associated in Microsoft was identified, and June 16th, the Microsoft Security Advisory was released, and June 17th, a Belarus antivirus company found the rootkit temp hider vulnerability that allowed access to shortcuts in Ink, and also a new signing of JMicron technology for a different variation of Stuxnet was identified. June 19th, Simons reported WinCC infections in SCADA systems. June 20th, Symantec monitors and command and control traffic for identifying signatures of this malware. June 22nd, that JMicron certificate is revoked. August 2nd, the Microsoft patch for the shell shortcut vulnerability is released. In August 6th, Symantec reports the ability to hide code via Stuxnet in the PLC for industrial control modules. September 14th, 2010, Microsoft releases the printer spool vulnerability patch, and in September of 2010, Symantec presents the virus bulletin and analysis. There's legal and ethical issues associated to Stuxnet. Initially, it's difficult to assign attribution for fully understanding the legal ramifications of utilizing Stuxnet. The difficulty to assign attribution is related to the fact that no government has provided acknowledgement, including the theorized responsible governments of US and Israel. The ethical dilemmas are associated to a two-sided coin, looking at the perspectives of both the attacker and the victim or target. The attacker of utilizing Stuxnet would likely attribute the ethical perspective of being actually ethical, or properly ethical, in the sense that they're mitigating a worse problem down the line of nuclear processing leading to other possible issues, including like the loss of human life. The ramifications and end results of Stuxnet didn't impact human lives in any physical way, only impacted the centrifuge machines for uranium processing and destroyed some of those machines in the process. The potential nation-state involvement demonstrates that this is a government proposed solution, especially considering the complexity of the malware package. The victim or target side, being Iran, would likely consider this non-ethical in the fact that the attacker is utilizing a piece of malware to infiltrate their companies and extract the ability to control remote into air-gapped systems and cause damage or disrupt the processing of the uranium supply. The traditional versus cyber warfare extends to the actuality that it's illegal for Iran to process or be in control of uranium or nuclear materials. And we can look deeper into that ethical and legal side of whether they should be held responsible and if the use of force is appropriate from the attacker's side. Analysis and recommendations involved. Overview and conclusion of what Stuxnet is a worm targeting nuclear facilities in Iran. It is largely praised for its synergistic components, though not super sophisticated. The way that the components work together is more sophisticated and is what the underlying cause of the stealth and impact for a worm to travel across air gap systems. Good versus bad, we see transnational tensions associated to Israel and Iran conflict. We don't want to see that turn into physical or traditional conflict or warfare. Iran had sanctions against owning uranium or nuclear materials and processing those materials by the United Nations, and they broke those sanctions and illegally obtained it to process it. So the understanding of whether that is the legal use of force from the UN's perspective is difficult to discern, especially when cyber warfare and the borders associated are difficult to quantify in the sense of how much of an impact it had. Some recommendations for policies and training coincide with like certificate authorities hardening access to those certificates, rotating certificates more frequently, and then training within, from an Iranian perspective, the actual facilities to provide device audits for I/O devices that, like USB, that may be utilized, best practices for authentication and authorization across vendors and internal employees, and several other opportunities for making sure that anybody that connects to these industrial machines are appropriately connecting to them with authorized devices. And these are my sources for the images I utilized and the timeline information that I procured. Thank you for listening and hope you have a nice rest of your day.